Hello and welcome to Chow and Tell. My name is Reina and I want to tell you about a movie I saw recently called The Lunchbox. The Lunchbox is a film about, many things, but it's set in Bombay or Mumbai as it's called now. And a central theme of the movie is these tiffin walas. They're the ones that carry lunch back and forth. From usually there's a housewife that cooks the lunch, and then traditionally the man who's working receives the lunch in his office, and the delivery is done by these tiffin walas who apparently never ever make a mistake, as studied by many case studies. I think even the Harvard Business School studied the efficiency of these dabba walas or tiffin walas as they're called. But in this movie, it's about the one case when they make a mistake and what happens. But the reason I'm bringing it up also, not just because it's a fabulous movie and you should totally see it if you can, and it has to do with food, of course, very central theme. So food in India, and it's in the monsoon, and I miss the monsoon season, so definitely highly recommend it. But the reason I'm bringing it up today is because there's something said in that movie that really resonated with me, and I loved it. And it went along the lines of, sometimes the wrong train can bring you to the right station. And my show today takes on that theme. And I have with me here in the studio a guest who's going to tell me his journey of how the wrong train led him to the right station. Please welcome today to the studio, to Chow and Tell, BreadBoy. Welcome, BreadBoy.
Hi, hello, how are you?
It's good to have you on the show.
Great to be on here. Hello, Cambridge. Hello, world.
So, I don't know if you've seen that movie, but you might have heard that phrase, the wrong train bringing you to the right station.
You know, I have seen that movie. I was
yeah?
supposed to go see it with my wife, and she kept hounding me, and we went and saw 3 or 4 action movies instead, and eventually, when this movie was still in the theater, almost, I'd say 6 weeks, 7 weeks after we first talked about it,
Yeah.
I finally caved and we went and saw it, and I really enjoyed it, actually. I thought it was a great movie.
Oh, she must have good taste.
Yeah. I would say she married me, but that wouldn't be proof to my benefit, so we'll just leave that alone.
You're a funny man, are you? So do you remember the line in that movie then?
Yeah. Wrong train, right station.
Wrong train, right station. And I think you have a little bit of a story that interested me, at least, that was similar to that wrong train, right station theme. And I was hoping you could share it with us today.
Sure. So what happened was, in my early 30s, I found myself single and decided I need to do something about this. So I had a brainwave. I was sick of going to bars to try and meet girls, and it was loud, obnoxious environment, and I'm not sure that's the kind of person I was looking for anyway. So I decided I'm going to start taking cooking classes. And cooking classes, typically there's more girls than guys.
I remember a comic book I used to read very often as a kid, and there were high school students, and there were guys in there that would always sign up for the home economics class just because there were girls in it.
Yeah.
So you were like that.
Exactly. I was exactly like that. And, so I started going here in Cambridge at the Cambridge Center for Adult Ed. Great classes. I've taken a bunch of them. The Spanish classes were amongst my favorite. Southern food. So I learned to cook a lot of different kinds of food there. And I never actually met any girls there that anything happened with or got interesting. I did, however, become good friends with my cooking instructor,
who was not a girl.
He was an older Puerto Rican Jewish guy. Really nice guy. He'd come over to my house, we'd cook some food, and it was a lot of fun.
Oh wow. That was an unexpected outcome already.
Yeah, exactly.
Huh.
Yeah, you go to class to meet girls, and you end up getting the teacher's phone number who's not a girl. So hey, go figure. But what happened was I actually really started liking cooking.
Huh.
And
did you used to cook before that, or?
You know, I'd make fried eggs
Yeah.
and nothing serious. I'd make omelets, and if I put different things in an omelet, I'd call it a whole different omelet. And to me, that was two separate dishes, but we all know it's really the same thing.
So, sort of bachelor cooking, as it were.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, instant noodles and, boiled rice and put kimchi on it was about as fancy as I got. Which is delicious, by the way.
So this was quite a change. Then taking the classes, what happened? Like, what did you discover about? Like, what did you love? Like, what changed?
What I found was it's not really that difficult to cook a really tasty meal.
Yeah.
It's quite easy and it's quite relaxing. I work in technology, pretty stressful job, and when I get home in the evening, I want to do something to unwind, and cooking is actually very relaxing.
Huh.
It's kind of a back to the earth thing in a way. You're making something with your own hands.
Yeah.
You chop and you saute and you boil and something comes out of it. And the best part
love
is you get to eat it. And even better, if you like food spicier, make it spicier. If you like it less spicy, make it less spicy. If you like broccoli, double the amount of broccoli in the recipe. There's no one to tell you can't do that.
I love this idea of the back to the earth, and it's sort of a transformation process, right? You get some raw stuff, ingredients that are all separate, and you do something to it. You apply heat, you apply pressure, you cut, you chop, you add spice, you put them in the pot at different times, you add oils and seasonings, and suddenly it becomes this dish.
Yeah.
And then you get to eat it.
Right, and I'll be honest, the first few times it wasn't really recognizable as the thing I started out to make. But I found with a little practice, and it didn't take much, with a little practice, things actually started tasting good.
Huh.
And then my friends would come over and they'd be like, wow, this is pretty tasty.
That must have helped.
That helped.
Yeah.
And then, I got good at making quite a few different things. And I started running a potluck at my house. So,
oh, wow.
yeah, once a month, I would have a bunch of people over, and it started with maybe half a dozen people.
Yeah.
And over a period of 3 or 4 months, it grew to about 25 or 30 people in my apartment, which is not that huge.
That's a lot of people.
Yeah, it was crowded.
It's a lot of food.
It's a lot of cleanup is what it is after everyone goes home.
See, this is the thing with potlucks. Guys, my pet peeve. I don't know if this is yours, but bring your A game to a potluck. If you're going to go to a potluck, cook something, bring your A game, just, go all out. That's where you get to show off. And
exactly.
Even if it's something simple, make it yourself. That's what I always say. And then I've had potlucks where it's 2 a.m. and the host is left with a giant mess. So I totally know what you mean about the cleanup, and it's always good. Whenever I go over to someone's house, I usually try to at least help or volunteer to help clean up.
And people are good about that.
Yeah.
Generally, if there's 25 people over, there'll be 2 or 3 that help you clean up a lot. And there'll be a couple that clean up along the way that go unnoticed even.
Yeah.
But once in a while you catch them doing it, and it's great that they do.
But the other good part is, you get to try so many dishes. People have an incentive to make something.
Yeah.
And then you have this amazing variety of food, which I'm imagining as a bachelor, even if you're learning to cook, there's only so much you'd make just for one person to eat. Or
exactly.
Were you eating this food regularly once you started cooking, or?
Well, not regularly in the sense that I wouldn't cook every day, but I would cook once or twice a week and cook enough for maybe 4 or 5 portions.
Okay, so there was some subsistence cooking as well.
Right.
As,
yeah. And I'd cook maybe 2 or 3 different types of vegetables and one meat at a time. Maybe once over the weekend where you have more time, do something more elaborate, and then maybe middle of the week. And then mix it up over the week so you're not eating the same thing all the time, because that gets boring pretty quickly.
Did you always like food, like eating?
I always liked eeting, yeah.
I'm sure that helps. It helps to have
absolutely.
some interest in it. But so what were you doing before you learned to cook? How were you
scrounging. I was a
scrounging.
Scrounger gatherer, we call it. Sub shops, delis, prepared foods at supermarkets. Whole Foods has some pretty good stuff, but you can go broke pretty quickly eating there all the time. And then leftovers from the dinner of the night before. You know,
So you're eating out quite a bit.
eating out quite a bit. Yeah.
Which I guess, I mean, if were you a student? at
No,
some
even
point,
after
or,
that.
Oh, after you were a student. So I mean, that can still get expensive.
It does.
It adds up, and I guess health-wise also. I don't know
Yeah.
that, bachelors in their 30s are really thinking about that. But
Well, it's time for them to start. You know,
yeah.
by the time they're in their 40s, you got to be thinking about that. Yeah, and even in your 30s, eating restaurant food every day, not only does it get old, even though there's a huge variety of restaurants, the style of cooking is a more decadent style of cooking as
True.
opposed to at home. You'd have a more Spartan style. And that was actually one other reason I started cooking on my own,
Yeah.
is because I grew up in India, and the food that I got at home in India, I could never find in a restaurant here.
So wait, where are you from in India?
In Bombay, actually. So I really identified with the Lunchbox movie.
Oh, really?
And a lot,
Oh my God, we're from the same town.
Yeah. Funny coincidence. right?
Yeah. Well, you've been here longer though.
I've
than
been
I have.
here about 22, 23 years
All
now.
right.
12 years in Cambridge.
We should have lunch sometime.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, you have a wife.
Yeah, I
Never
do.
mind.
Well,
Oh, well, you could invite her along.
we could. We could do it when she's out of town or something.
Oh, this is not on camera.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, I'll give you my number later.
So, yeah,
so
you know,
right, so-
one other thing about the classes, in a strange way, it actually did work for the primary purpose, which was not the learning to cook, it was the meeting girls.
Huh.
Because I met this other Indian fellow there and his girlfriend, and they came over to one of these potlucks at my house.
Oh.
And we were just chatting, and he says, "Oh, my cousin is from Bombay." And I said, "Oh yeah, who?" As if I'm going to know this person.
Right.
Bombay is a city of 20 million people. The chances that I will actually know his cousin, slim to none. So he names his cousin. I'm like, really? I know her. I rode the school bus with her.
No way.
Yeah, and that was part of how her and I got back in touch and
Huh.
started chatting, and
Aw.
then eventually a year and a half or 2 years later, we actually ended up getting married.
Well, that's a great love story.
Yeah.
Oh, so there just goes to prove the wrong train and the right station. So you
Exactly.
started off, well, it's kind of a meandering path is what
Yeah.
it is really. You started off hoping to meet girls, you learned to cook instead,
Right.
hung out with your cooking instructor, started these potlucks,
Yeah.
met a bunch of people through that, and I'm sure you ended up eating a lot of interesting food.
Definitely.
And then in some weird roundabout way you met your wife.
Yeah. Yeah. Who was then impressed that I could cook?
See,
So full
guys,
circle.
if you're bachelors out there, I think the bar crawls have only so much appeal, but take it from this guy. Learn to cook. You can impress. I would be impressed. I know I'm definitely impressed by a man who can cook. Although it's really weird because a lot of the big food shows have male chefs on it. So there's men who are chefs, but there's something appealing about a man who cooks. Just simple food, can survive, can nourish himself and his family or his friends, and doesn't need a giant bunch of people behind him measuring and cleaning and cutting and he just comes in and does the big work.
Yeah.
In fact, actually, this might be. So tell me a little about what you do in your other life. Your
In my regular work
Yeah,
life,
yeah.
I design cameras, actually tiny little cameras for medical products and industrial inspection. So I put cameras into nuclear power plants and other industrial type products and situations to
cool.
inspect places where you can't really look. So, in a giant turbine, if you have a small fault inside, it's a giant catastrophe. But you take this tiny little camera and you shove it in there, and you can see that the turbine has a problem, or you can see that it doesn't have a problem.
So I remember, we chatted briefly before the show, and I sort of understood that you work by yourself.
Yeah.
Or it's your own company, or
I'm
just
the
have your own
janitor
thing?
in the company, and I'm the CEO and the accountant and the sales guy and the engineer and
Oh wow! So,
yeah.
Actually, that's really interesting, and it's not dissimilar in a way to cooking. If you don't have a huge team behind you,
Right.
to do the cleanup, or the bus boy who's going to take the stuff away, or
Yeah.
the prep cook or the sous chef, I'm assuming that you did a lot of the cooking on your own.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I found is when I started cooking, I would do things in series. So I would first chop vegetables, then do whatever cooking, then do the cleanup, then eat my meal, and it added up to a huge amount of time. But as I got more practice cooking, I found I was doing things more in parallel. So if a recipe called for, let's say you were making a Caribbean beef stew, first you start the meat, you start browning it, then while it's browning, you chop the vegetables. While the vegetables
Right.
are then, once they go into the pot, you take the chopping board and everything you used and wash it off. And then by the time you're actually done cooking, you only really have a couple of minutes of cleanup left.
Huh.
Because rather than sitting around and watching meat turn brown, which by the way then really tempts you to mess with the meat, you keep flipping it, which is not good. Put it in there, leave it alone, let it do its thing, you do your thing, clean up.
So what you're
listen
saying
to
really
music.
is that you're an engineer.
Yeah.
That's what I understood. So in a way, is it almost like you're applying these principles of engineering and optimization and efficiency to the kitchen?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's
that
really
comes-
neat.
yeah,
And it comes with
it comes with
Or
practice.
did they teach you any of this at the classes that you took? Or?
Kind of implicitly, they don't
Yeah.
teach you to do it,
Yeah.
but you watch the instructor, and the instructor is doing it.
So I have a cousin actually here in the area, and he's young. He's out of college. He's working, and I know he struggles a lot with time and food, and eating healthy, eating regularly, eating enough, and eating often enough, but not too often. And with work and their social life and everything, he has a really hard time. And I mean, his dream is to just have. I think if there was a pill he could just take that was food for the day, like a
Yeah.
Charlie and the Chocolate Factory style meal in a pill, he would
Right.
probably do it.
Wouldn't impress any women though if they come over and they find him just eating pills.
I'm sure he's a bit of a Casanova too. I hope you're watching. I'm not going to name you. So what would you advise him? Just so, I'm hoping somebody else out there can benefit from your experience.
I would say, take a cooking class. If you don't have the time to take a cooking class, go look online. There are so many resources. Look on Epicurious, or just Google some of your favorite dishes, whatever you've enjoyed eating.
Yeah.
Set your sights low to begin with. Learn something easy. Then as you get better at it, as you get better knife skills, as you get better with learning when things are done, when you should flip a steak, for example, or whatever else you're cooking, as you get better at processing the food, not processing in a bad way, like food processing,
Yeah.
processing in a good way, like chopping,
Prepping.
prepping, all of that. That's a better word. As you get better, graduate to the next level and the next level, and you'll find that it's really not difficult to make a really tasty meal. It doesn't take a lot of time if you plan ahead. Like for example, if you need to marinate something and you do it the night before, you split your time in half over 2 evenings.
So I mean, what I'm hearing is also that this is it's become part of your lifestyle as well. So it wasn't
Absolutely.
just, cooking for survival, but because you enjoy it,
Yeah.
now it's become part of your social life.
Yeah.
You think about it a little bit beforehand. What do I need to
Yeah.
shop or prep? What would I like to make?
Yeah.
How do you organize your potlucks? Like, do people bring whatever their favorite dishes? Or
Absolutely, yeah. When I first started thinking about the potluck, it was okay. You do desserts, you do entrees, you do appetizers. I said, you know what? No, do whatever you want. Make whatever you want. And if we end up with 6 chocolate cakes, we're gonna eat 6 chocolate cakes. But I didn't want to limit people. I wanted to encourage them to learn to cook. In
That's
fact,
great.
there's this one friend of mine in particular. He's not really into cooking all that much. and often he would have his mom cook something. She lives in the area, and his mom is a great cook. She'd make all these awesome Persian cutlets, and
Oh,
the
wow.
hummus she makes is to die for.
Maybe that's why he's not going to learn to cook, because she's cooking for him all the time.
Could be. But the things that, I love when he brought the food his mom cooked over, but a couple of times he's
Yeah.
actually made things.
Oh, yeah?
And to be honest, they weren't the most delicious things I ate, but I was the most impressed by those
Sure.
because compared to what he would usually do, he went above and beyond. He marinated stuff,
Yeah.
he put dry rubs on things.
Yeah.
So he really got into it. And I think that helped him also because it showed him that, hey, I can make things that people would enjoy.
That's really nice. So I'm so impressed that you went from not cooking yourself to learning how to cook, discovering that you had this passion that you didn't even know about, and then I think it's really great that you've kind of paid that forward to others. You've created a forum where you've invited your friends to do the same thing, to have this similar experience where they get a chance to cook and to share it, and it's not a threatening environment, it's not a test, it's not a class really or anything. And it's kind of, I'm guessing, relaxed and groovy, and
It's relaxed. We drink a bunch of beers, and we sit around and eat food, and then we eat more food.
So I want to talk a little bit about the progression you've made from that first cooking class that you took, and you didn't. Did you know how to use a knife or measure things much?
Just barely.
And you come with this snazzy moniker. I want to know why BreadBoy is called BreadBoy, and
So a few months ago I decided, my wife's a really good cook, so out of my own self-interest, basically, I toned down the cooking at home because, why should I cook second-rate food when I can have first-rate food?
oh, I'm sure
But-
she'd appreciate a meal every now and then, like you
She
said,
does, she does.
like your friend
Yeah.
who cooked, even though it wasn't the greatest meal, and you said,
Well, you're absolutely right. She would appreciate a meal. And I do occasionally cook. But what I've decided is instead of us competing, making similar things, why don't I take a different approach?
Mhm.
So I started making bread. And
and is that something you had done before?
I had never made bread before, started maybe 2.5 months ago.
Yeah.
And I picked one recipe at random. I really like spicy stuff, so it had to be a savory bread for me.
Okay.
And I like cheese, so it had to be a cheesy bread. So I picked a jalapeno cheese bread. I went to Google, nowhere of all things, and I typed in jalapeno cheese bread, and
Right.
out came 25 million recipes. I looked at the first 3,
Mm-hmm.
and I picked the one that had pictures. Because that makes it easy for me to know what I'm doing, I'm
Fair
like,
enough.
okay, that's what it's
Yeah.
supposed to look like.
Oh, because you'd never made this before,
I
so
never
it helped
made
to. I mean, it's kind of daunting. Like bread as a
Yeah.
thought is kind of a daunting thought. Even for me, I cook a lot, but I don't make bread very often. I don't remember the last time I did. But you
Yeah.
just made. You didn't take a class for this.
No, I didn't take a class. I
Oh,
looked
wow.
at the recipe, and it was very simple, step by step. Put some yeast in warm water. This is the general recipe for basically
Right.
all bread. I'm speaking with 10 weeks experience, so I may be completely wrong.
But it's worked. It's been working for you. You're
It's
saying
worked
so.
so far, yeah.
Yeah.
The general recipe is get your yeast to rise.
Yeah.
Use warm water. A tip I learned along the way is if you put a little sugar in the water, that gives the yeast something to feed,
Ah. Okay.
and then it's
I think
more
that's happened to me in the
Yeah.
past, where the yeast just kind of sits there, and then
yeah.
your bread fails, and then it's kind of discouraging.
Mhm.
So
the
that's a
sugar
good
really
tip.
speeds it up.
Okay.
Flour, water, oil, and the yeast.
Well.
That's the basis for bread.
Wow.
What kind of flour? Well, the recipe called for all-purpose flour. That's your regular white,
Mhm.
really fine flour. The first couple of times I made it that way because I wanted to get that right.
Yeah.
And then I started tweaking it. So I started putting in whole wheat flour. So I did,
So you're doing that innovation thing again.
Yeah.
Little experimentation and
Exactly.
innovation.
And customization,
And customization. Once you got, I guess, did you get a feel of the dough after it's risen, what
Mhm.
it should feel like a bit,
Yeah.
and get familiar with it, and then it's like, I mean, we got taught this in English class, right? You learn the rules and then you break them, but you learn the
Exactly.
rules first and
Exactly.
know the boundaries within which you're supposed to operate, and then take a little bit of freedom and liberties outside.
Yeah. Learn
So
to walk before you can run.
great
Right.
principle, and I love that your wrong train has brought you to the bread station.
Yeah.
Can we see
Yeah,
what
absolutely.
you
So
made?
I have
BreadBoy has very kindly brought us one of his homemade loaves of bread. That is a gorgeous piece of
and
bread.
it's a weighty piece of bread.
Oh my, that's big.
That
You
weighs
see that
about a
there?
pound and a half
Is that-
right there.
That's cheese. Is this the
That's-
cheese and
yeah.
jalapeno bread?
This
This
is
is
a
a jalapeno cheese bread.
Jalapeno cheese bread. In here we
Wow.
have about 5 jalapenos, about 5 or so ounces of cheddar, grated cheddar,
That's great.
About-
Look at that beautiful loaf.
3 ounces of grated Parmesan, and a total of 4 cups of flour. I kind of settled on 3-to-1 ratio between all-purpose and whole wheat
So
flour.
the original recipe wasn't with the whole wheat flour.
It was all-purpose flour.
So that's I was always told that baking is a very exact science, and I'm sure it is to some extent. But the
Yeah.
fact that you can take some liberties even in baking is quite encouraging. I
Mhm.
might actually try to make some bread now. I'm
Yeah.
quite inspired. Shall we cut this? We have
Let's try
a minute
some.
and a bit left for the show, so I want to eat some bread. This is exciting.
Best part of a home-baked bread is the crust, because it's so nice and crunchy.
Here, let me show people the, oops. Let's go to this. Let's go to that slice. Yeah. We're slicing this up here, fresh in the studio. Hopefully we won't get too many crumbs on the equipment. That's good. Can I steal this here?
Absolutely.
Thank you. All right. Oh my, look at this.
You can see
That's
some
my-
jalapenos embedded in
Ooh,
there.
here, let me show people. Maybe they can see that. Oh, look at.
Ah,
So this must feel so good
yeah,
to make
exactly.
when this comes out, and your house must smell
Mm.
amazing, because every time I've walked by a bakery, it smells great. And if
Yeah.
your house smells like that all the time,
That's what it smells
man,
like. And I've kind of figured out
I'm
now
gonna try
that
some of this.
you can mix up the ingredients and put it in at night, and in the
This is
morning put it
delicious.
in the oven.
Oh my god, we're almost out of time. So, with a mouthful of really delicious jalapeno cheese bread, I want to thank you, BreadBoy, for coming on the
Thank you.
show, sharing your fabulous journey from no cook to amazing bread maker, potluck holder, dinner inspirer, and many other wonderful things. Hold on, I'm gonna chew. This
Chew
is
and
so
tell.
good. Chew and this is chew and That's the next incarnation of the show is chew and tell. It's spicy. It's good. It's so
Yeah.
good. I'm going to put a recipe for this up on my website, www.kitchen-intuition.com. Check it out. Thank you, BreadBoy. I
My
hope you'll join
pleasure.
us again someday on the show.
Absolutely.
And bye-bye. See you next
Bye.
week. Eat well.